Who is it?
Oh, finally.
Oh my gosh, hello, finally.
What? I'm seeing you. I'm feeling like all my lives are merging together.
How are you?
Oh, this is
Such
amazing.
a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I feel like I know you. I mean, I've seen you forever, so but this is.
I know, I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you. Welcome.
Here we are.
Yeah, this is the setup here. Welcome to the very first in-person conversation. This is our first in-person. Oh, you didn't know that?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What an honor. Are you serious?
You
I
should
didn't
be
know
very
that.
honored.
Oh,
This is our first in-person REFRESHbyKF conversation, and this has been a long time in the making, just because of schedules. I think one of my favorite text messages from you was, "I don't know how I missed this. I was in Asia." Really, it's okay. You're forgiven.
Yeah, no. When I saw you, you messaged me. That little slide in.
Yeah.
It was pretty exciting. I was like, oh my, because I feel like I've known you my whole life. Right? I'm sure you get this all the time from everybody.
But I mean, not from you. But yes, proceed.
Okay, so I feel like I've known you throughout my life in different phases because you've been so prolific.
Thank you.
And then I showed my son this. He's like, "Oh my God, you gotta respond back. You gotta respond back." You know,
Thank you, son, for making that.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
Yes, yes.
And then I've just been traveling a ton. You know, it's been a crazy year with getting. It's just always a crazy year, right?
Yeah.
With traveling around, finishing Lost Cities Revealed, getting that out into the world.
So good. Oh my gosh. We're gonna get to that, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then and all that in the mix, I'm like, when am I gonna hang out with Kim? When is this gonna happen? And it just happened to be this moment.
This moment right now, yeah. So again, this is our first in-person conversation, and REFRESHbyKF was basically, I started moving into the wellness space quite unexpectedly. I think like most things, you kind of know what you're passionate about, and then you realize what your needs are, what your own requirements are. And as you kind of maybe share it a little bit, because we're, public figures, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open of, oh my gosh, I need this too. Wow, this resonates with me. Okay. So that's how it really kind of birthed itself, and conversations that I just felt like, well, I want to talk to this person, so if somebody wants to listen, cool. And I found out that a lot of somebodies wanted to listen. Ooh. And so that's how the IG Lives started. And then from there, it was like, okay, now we can be in person again. And I followed your career for quite some time.
No.
And so, yeah. And so, as I was saying before we started rolling, I've unleashed my inner explorer. When I was younger, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I realized I'm talking to an engineer. And math said, no, that's not in your future, honey. So I listened. It's okay, you don't have to feel bad. I accept my truth.
Oh, no, but I mean, being a marine biologist is not just about I found that being an explorer and all these different things, it's like you're not using all the things, all the little bits of scientific knowledge that you learn in school, applying that to the process. It's almost more like you're allowing your inner child to be alive. You have to, it's more about curiosity and wonder and believing that there's an unknown out there that's worth looking for, which kind of gets beaten out of you in life, right? And like when everybody's like, okay, well, everything's in the textbook. You gotta do it like this. This is the math, this is all these things. And you got, those are important things to learn. I'm not saying don't do school, but the explorer part, it's not about that. It's about the wonder, right? Like
the curiosity.
Yeah.
What do you think is maybe the intersection or the meetup between wellness and exploring?
Being able to stay healthy, and for me have been really important because my world is physical, right? Like I go to places that are hard to get to physically. And I've got what people would perceive as, people call it a disability. I think of it as adaptive, futuristic, early adopter, prototyping super skill, right? Which is my augmented body. When I'm home, I'm doing a ton of stuff that is focused on keeping my physical body okay, right? Like it's stretching and eating really well, drinking a ton of water, or nature. You know, I want to be in the ocean. I want to be in the ocean. I want to feel the electrical connections of the water in the ocean. I want to feel that, and it's at sunrise, right? It's like, you know, you got to work a little harder to get for the thing that's just perfect. But if you dial it in just right at sunrise, you know, it's painful to wake up that early, but you ride out at dark, and you know, as the sun's lifting up, there's this moment where everything becomes pastel. The colors, they don't make sense. They just become this sort of euphoric pastel across the horizon in the sea, you know, the sea spray. And then a dolphin will sort of just right next to you. Just the other day, I saw a whale come through the lineup. I couldn't believe it, right? And that, it just takes all the other things and it just puts them into context. You know, it's like, okay, this is just a gift, our experience here, you know?
So when you are in that juxtaposition of being very present and then, like you so eloquently said, literally going through time, what is it that the construct of something or some place or some time that is lost that impacts us the way that it does to keep exploring in it and adventuring, journeying into it?
Yeah, well, I think it's very internal, right? We all grew up wanting mystery and wonder to exist. I think that's why films like Indiana Jones and stuff like that, that's what, you know, that's what it gets to us, right?
I'm laughing because of all the things that you could have said. Before I wanted to be a marine biologist, I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Yeah.
And when I was in studio school, while I was doing the Facts of Life, I actually wrote a report about archaeology, and that's when the first Indiana Jones movie came out, and I was able to source one of the publicity shots from the movie, and I used that as my cover of my report. So I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, we're rooted in that. See, this is a common human thing. This is why we're friends.
Yes,
you know? This
absolutely.
is why we're going to be in the mountains together.
Yes.
Yeah, no, Indiana Jones or any of these other sort of childhood movies of exploration, I think they represent this very basic thing in almost everybody, which is you want to feel like there's something unknown to step into. I think that for me, all these different cities or societies or civilizations that I bump into, I see them as just something, another chapter, right? I feel like there's this huge book of the human experience, and each one of those is a chapter in one version of that experiment. You know, the experiment of how we come together, how we exist, how we coexist, all these things. We're all the same. We all actually have all those chapters within us. There's just different ways that they played out, you know? And so when I go into the jungle, I'm not looking for some esoteric thing far away from my own culture. I feel like I'm looking at face to face one version of who I could have been in my own humanity. Because ultimately we all came from one place. We all came, you know, we all came out of Africa and small tribe, you know, small group of people, and we're all kind of the same family.
Right.
We just ended up in different places with different weather, and that led to different ways that we hang out, and then different societies that build. And so every time I go back into time, I'm like, well, I feel like I'm searching for myself.
Why is that so powerful?
Yeah. Because I think, you know, ultimately, I think maybe the greatest truth that I've stumbled across is that our realities are created in our mind. I think it's so powerful because deep down inside, if we realize it, we can literally create any reality. Yeah. Let me choose to see it in as best a way as I can. Let me choose to see this moment in this way or that way or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, you know, and then it becomes real. And then, so for me going into these different societies, like lately it's been incredible. I've always loved the jungle, right? I've always loved the jungle. But I've been able to get face to face with, more recently, this living community, this sort of descendants of the Maya, these living Maya.
Yes.
You know, and And they're teaching me stuff about my connection to nature that I knew was there, but I didn't realize was there. And now that they've taught me this, I can't see it any other way. I mean, it's just a totally different perspective than one where we're like, okay, well, we're separate from nature. That's kind of the thing that happens a lot when we grow up in big cities. But for the Maya, who grew up in the jungle, out of the jungle, everything had a soul and they coexisted with it. So now, that's in my mind. I've learned that thing from our ancient past, our shared ancient past. And now when I look around at everything else, I just have a different relationship to everything.
It's a different connection. Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a different connection. I mean, I'm like, oh, tree, let me hug you. We're connected. I love you, tree. We got souls.
Not like
We're soul trees.
Not like that, but the connection to that perspective, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like maybe think of it as my reality sometimes feels like a big water painting. Like a watercolor painting, and then a new color comes in and sort of blends all the other things, and it just shifts things a little bit, shifting. Yeah. Okay.
I
do. I understand that. I understand that very much so. When you mentioned your own personal journeys, can we kind of...
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you definitely have a personal wellness journey, a refreshing that unexpectedly happened.
Yeah. What year was that? What year is it now? Yeah, about where are we now? About 8 years ago. Yeah. Where was I 8 years ago? I think I just finished filming my second documentary film for National Geographic. The first one was a personal quest. I was originally, before I became a known National Geographic Explorer, I was an engineer, just finished school, just finished graduate school. I sold everything I had, and I moved into my car, and I made a project to raise money to launch these expeditions to go look for Genghis Khan's tomb in Mongolia, which sounds ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. But
it's not a small project.
Yeah, that was born out of, I think that was born out of my childhood where I grew up in the West. I grew up in California, and there was never really, I learned a lot of things, but, and I grew up in England. I grew up in these different places that were very Western. And I never was taught much history of my own ancestry that I thought I looked like, and or there was never a hero, right, of my own ancestry that was talked about. And I ended up, my parents said that my grandparents said that they thought we came from the north. That's what they meant by Mongolia. We all had this blue spot like a birthmark that left after a couple of years. They call it the Mongol spot on our lower back. And so when I was in college, I was every chance I could get, I was buying a plane ticket to Asia to just go and live, amongst nomads or whatever, and backpack around and get connected to this thing. Because I don't know, I really wanted to figure out, I think I felt like I needed roots, And then I learned the story of Genghis Khan, and I launched this crazy project. and we ended up getting funding, and I spent the next 3 years up in the mountains of Mongolia looking for this tomb. And we think, we found something really, really pretty compelling, a series of temples right on the side of the mountain that I was looking at in the center of a sacred forbidden precinct, and hundreds of pounds of artifacts and horse bones and things all buried under the roots of trees. But it launched my career to Nat Geo. And then I had another expedition where I was in China with the first emperor's tomb, down under the terracotta warriors, and wild. And then I get home, I'm having this moment where I'm like, everything's happening. My life is taking off. I have all these expeditions going. I just gone to my first Burning Man, right? All these things were happening. I had a couple of kids. They were incredible. They were young. I'd gone through this pretty beautiful, very affirming, wonderful divorce with my parenting partner. It doesn't have to be bad. It can be very positive, right? And I know that sounds weird, but I think that even those kind of things can end up being positive if you can work as a team to choose to make it positive, right? And then what ended up, I'm like one day just cruising around. I'd go fishing with my daughter, hanging out with myself, and go to a friend's barbecue out in the middle of the desert, somewhere a little bit east in the desert area, and like that, boom, everything changes. I find myself that we go for a ride in this little cart that like this like, you know, kind of 4-wheel drive sort of thing for the kids. And the next thing you know, I feel my friend's driving, he makes a couple turns, I feel everything shifting, everything rolling, time slowing down, all the cliches, life flashing before your eyes. And then I'm lying in a cloud of dirt and dust and blood and this like kind of wild harmonic sound in my mind. All I can hear is this humming and like everything just sounds dull. And that was when I feel like I had a critical moment where I saw a reality that I think is really core to my experience in life, which is that we have many deaths and rebirths, even in a single lifetime. And we have to choose to let go of what we've lost in order to step into what we've gained, you know? And that's a big one because it's hard to let go, right? But if you do let go, then you can actually, it's like what you've gained out of any rebirth is the next version of your, you know, of your many chapters, just like the versions of humanity. And I look down and I'm, you know, I see my daughter sort of screaming, looking up at me through the dust, and she's okay, but she's just scared. And my son's okay in the back, and my friend, he runs around and he's like, oh my God, I realize I'm pinned. And he somehow lifts this thing off the ground with his own bare one hand. I don't know how, it must have been thousands of pounds. And he pulls me out from under it. And I'm like, get the kids out of here. And I look down and it's like so clear, everything has changed. It's like when you realize that your life has changed, that moment, you're like, okay, like who am I now, right? I remember thinking to myself, am I gonna be able to put my kids on my shoulders? Am I gonna be, you know, like I'm a young dad, like how am I always wanted to go backpacking and teach my kids how to fly fish. I love fly fishing. It's like, am I ever gonna be able to do that again? I don't know, everything was just like, oh my God, everything's changed. And then you go through this process where, you know, and at that moment, somebody came, this person I started dating, like not even that long before. She had just been in India, and she came in this place called Varanasi, India, where, I don't know, have you heard of Varanasi before? It's one of the oldest inhabited cities.
Was that a side-eye?
No, that was not it. I was in my.
Did y'all see that? His team missed it.
She never heard of Varanasi. Did you hear that? She never. I mean, who doesn't?
I was being honest because I could have said, "Oh yeah."
Oh yeah.
And you know, but yeah, I was honest, right?
No,
and
she's
so,
like,
and he kind of looks like.
That's you know. I'm sorry.
You ain't never heard of that. Like, go ahead. I'm sorry. You were discussing your liberation.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Then I side-eyed her. Yeah, what a guy. You know, like who does that?
Right?
I'm living in this deep spiritual moment, and then I'm just like, whatever. You know, like whatever. Whatever. Yeah, that's what happened.
Right.
You know. Anyway, this friend, she comes back from there with this understanding, and I know this sounds so almost cliche, but to have lived it, I'm telling you, this is how it went down.
Okay.
She wraps her hands around my head, and we just start chanting Om. Okay. You know, I don't know if you've spent much time thinking about this. I mean, we see everybody get the little Om symbols and everything like that. But the more I've learned over the years what Om really means, the more I realize that it's just that it's the sound of everything, all things flowing together, like all things, all moans, all laughs, all cries, all everything, all the different versions of existence, all the different things, all the events, all the goals, everything, all into one continuous river of movement, like a river of water that turns into a brook, that turns into a waterfall, that rushes into the ocean, that goes to the sky, that becomes rain. And that whole cycle, that's the eternal infinity that is the sound Om. She wraps her hands around my head and just starts chanting Om, and I don't know what it means. And I just start chanting Om. And that's how I passed the hour or so that passes before the ambulance arrives. And, you know, and it was the moment of my death and my rebirth. And in that moment, I was in that everything. And I was, you know, after that, I had to make some decisions, what to do next. Like, how am I gonna try to save this thing? And, you know, you're never gonna walk again if you try to do that at all, you know. Like, you know, at one point, I'm like, well, we just gotta accept our loss to step into our game, you know? And then a friend came up and he showed me a picture of a guy sitting inside the heart of a barrel wave, like a huge wave, with this bright yellow prosthetic sticking out of the back of his surfboard. And that one image
unlocked
was like,
everything.
Yeah, it's like, let's go.
Whew.
Yeah. No side eyes now. No side eyes.
No side eyes. Wow, that is a personal journey, if ever I've heard one. Is it because of it being in hindsight that you make it sound far more easy, or was it truly then as it is now in your telling of it, the unfolding of it? I guess what I'm asking is, was it as easy, or it doesn't seem traumatic?
Oh, no, I don't know, because memory is a funny thing, and actually, in some ways it doesn't matter, because your memory is the reality that you then have, because now that's the thing I saw. But I can remember it being very joyful. I can remember it being weird, that people would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I was like, that doesn't quite feel like it describes it to me, my kids, they're pretty psyched, I mean, like my son Charlie, he loves to ski, and I love skiing, and we don't wait in any lines, like, we don't wait in any lines at all, right? And that's a big deal in the ski, on a holiday weekend at Mammoth, that's rough, right?
That's major. That is major.
My daughter, she's, I do walk around with her on my shoulders, right? Like all that stuff happened, right? And we had this relationship to each other that was, through that whole process, profound. It was big. Traumatic isn't quite the right way to describe it. It did change us all, but it was joyful. And I'm very grateful, but it's not because of what's inside me. It's because I had this community of people around me, right? Like I had all these people that were so loving that it just made it joyful. And I think that's one of my other big experiences in life, is that we just gotta treat each other well. Like we gotta take care of each other. We gotta step up, and then all the big hard things can become joyful.
If somebody were to follow that up with, why do we have to?
Isn't that a better world to live in? You make the reality you want, right? I don't know. I feel the more I give to those that I love, it's almost more for me. It feels right. And that's been my experience with my teams, right? Like I had these awesome crews that I'm a part of, and my friends here, my crew here at home that's with me today. And then the ones in the field, man, we have so much fun.
I know. I love your posts. I love your posts when you did a lot of the posting for season 2 of Lost Cities, which, got to touch on that in a second. But you've just got this great team of people. You guys love to sing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're not very good at it. We are not, but we love it. Yeah.
But you and I'm a crew baby. I've been around crew since I was 7 years old. And so I understand it's a village, it's a family. And you do take care of each other. And that's, in the confines of a soundstage or, a controlled environment on a location of a movie set. You out in the for real wild. Y'all have to.
Yeah, well,
right?
yeah. Okay, Lost Cities. This is the culmination of all those years. The last season was called Lost Cities Revealed. Whatever comes next, it'll have, different names. They're always, we're always making different things, trying different things. But it's just the same general quest of using tools like LiDAR or drones or radar and things like this to look into different versions of our human experience. Now I'm trying to shift it a little bit, right?
Yes, and pause there because we have to explain what LiDAR is. I know because I've watched like everything that he does.
LiDAR.
Yes, but it is. Can I try it?
Oh yeah, please.
So it is a mapping, a scanning mapping of what is underneath, like jungle and to a certain degree even ocean, and you're able to see when they take all of these scans through sonar.
Well, the water sonar, the LiDAR is lasers. So it's like sonar, it's exactly the same thing, but it's on a drone and it's lasers.
Right, and so they send the drone up and they map a certain area, right? And then they go and then they look at it, on their computer. What am I telling you? On their computers, and they're able to see what was there millions of years ago. Did I do okay?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. You nailed it.
Okay.
In fact, maybe you should just do the show. Could you narrate the next? Yeah.
Wait a minute, because I was with you until you said narrate, which means
all right.
your ass stays in the studio or in a sound. You ain't coming out with
Come
us.
on, let's
I
go.
haven't proven myself.
You gotta bring the
just
coffee. That's what you gotta bring. The
There you
special
go.
coffee. If you bring the coffee, then you're in.
Then I can come. Okay.
No, we have a good time. But we do go deep into the jungle. So we get the scans, and then we go deep into these really remote places, or high up into the mountains, or out into the deserts, and we end up very remote, and we have no idea what we're going to find every time. So the scan's the first step. You get some clues, and then you got to pull out your machete and put it on your snake gaiters, and you got to go.
Your what? Your snake what?
Yeah. What?
Your snake gators?
Snake gaiters. Yeah.
Okay.
The thing. There's like a Kevlar thing that stops the snake from getting through your leg.
Yes. Yes.
For me, I got like half the probability, because if a snake gets there, well, it's going to be a bad day for the snake.
It'll be a bad day for the snake.
It's like, whoa. Yeah.
So one of my favorite things, because I love every second of it, because you're, first of all, you're in some remote place. And so you're taking us someplace we've never been, more than likely. Even if you're a Nat Geo nut like I am, where I watch everything Nat Geo. And yet I still find like, oh, you're taking me someplace new. Yeah. Or even if it's a place like you've got this wonderful connectivity with the Mayan culture and civilizations. And you've done a few specials there. Told you. And so, but yet you find something new. When you guys found that new wall, it was like a wall from millions of years ago?
Well, thousands, but that was like thousands of years old. But the Maya, wow. I mean, that actually, after I lost my leg, there was a moment where a good friend of mine had just collected the first big LiDAR scan of the jungle. And when I saw it, it was like this. All of a sudden, you look at it, it's like, what? Mm-hmm. There's cities everywhere.
Yeah.
Pyramids that have never been seen, and all these hidden in the jungle. And Nat Geo called me up and said they didn't even. I mean, they were really kind during the whole hospital thing. They sent me a gift basket in the shape of a foot. It's like pretty funny, right? And then gave me a couple months to rest, and then they said, well, look, LiDAR scans are in. We got a helicopter to get us into the deeper part of the jungle. You want to go? They left it up to me to decide. Yeah. We went, and that first wave of expeditions were out to go and visit with all these different archaeologists that had grouped together under something called the Pakunam LiDAR Initiative. And I just visited all these different sites, and in a single year alone, that whole community of Mayanists discovered 60,000 new Mayan structures. So all of a sudden, the whole story of the Maya shifted. So that's why I stepped in, that was a dad pun, I stepped into this moment of discovery, right? But that's what's happening right now. People think that exploration is, they think it's like a black and white photo. They think of like, oh, that moment that they found something, the pyramids from the Western world saw it for the first time, that sort of thing. No, in a very real way, we are right now living in this grand moment, this incredible age of exploration because of essentially the tools that have come out that are like the microscope of biology or the telescope of...
Yeah, the tools and the tech has been amazing in terms of what you're now able to do and see and rewrite history in a number of ways. I remember the episode where you were able to share with this culture, these beautiful people, that what they thought was not just their only reality, and they were able to see the power of their ancestors because of what you guys had discovered. And it was, I mean, they were in tears to see that level of, I come from that.
Yeah, wow.
I come from that stock. How does it feel to not only affect like the world's knowledge, but then to when you zoom into the people that it's truly connected to? What does that feel like?
Awesome, you know. Awesome in so many ways, you know, because I think what I've been trying to do is change the way that exploration is, the mindset behind it. I grew up where it was very colonialist, it was very, like the perspective was very centered on a Western thing of this is, we're telling your history for you sort of thing. Yeah. For me, the journey that I've gone on has been one of self-discovery and empathy, you know, is a big part of our exploration. So when we're with people, we're with them, we're their guests, and we're, you know, we're learning from them in a way that is like human to human. And I think that when I see, for example, like there was a story that we did on the Kushites in Sudan. And I was with this incredible woman, Ikhlas, who, you know, a single mother, archaeologist, had to, she has a permanent stash of gas masks in her purse because of the civil wars that are going on, right? But when we were able to find the extent of this hidden capital of her ancient roots together, you know, she started crying, you know? And what I saw in it was that these stories, they're stories of, man, they're stories of identity, you know, and it's living identity, right? It's not some rocks in a jungle or little hills in a desert. It's people's stories. And I feel like so much of our world right now is set in this very immediate freak out. Everything's gone like, there's all this tension and everything feels kind of broken sometimes. And it's like, you know, but if we can choose to focus on that, or we can say, well, you know, like let's slow things down. Where do we really, like, who are we really? You know, like what is the essence of us really? And try to just take things at a different pace. Because right now, it's so frenetic that I don't think we're feeling like we can breathe sometimes, right? So for her, it was like, okay, I see this identity, I see my own power, and I knew it was there, but I'm affirmed now. And you know, you could feel that welling up inside her. In another show, we were in the jungles of the cloud forest in Peru. And we found—
That's the one I was thinking of. Yes. Yes.
You know, and we found, they gave us access to this sacred cliff where we found all these mummies, basically, these sarcophagi. And that was, wow. You know, I had to rope up, climb up to the top of this cliff, we're climbing up waterfalls, getting everything, and then before you know it, the cliff becomes steeper and steeper, and I started realizing that every time I put my hand in a hold, it's the only hold around, someone 800 years before put their hand in the exact same hold, you know? And then I look down and I'm climbing and I see a little fragment of ancient rope, you know, and I've got a rope around me. I'm like, oh man, I'm literally in the footsteps of the people who brought these sarcophagi here. And then I look over and there's a little bit of hair and like a tooth. I'm like, oh. And I look up and then there's the skull and the bones and all these other things. And I realize that I'm in the funeral procession of of somebody who was in this exact place 800 years before, and paying tribute to this worship of this, whatever this view is, this epic view that I'm looking at. And you just sit there and you look at the view and you're just like, wow, like this is one version of the human experience that now I am living in a profound way, and it transcends time. Then we bring all our tools, we scan the whole thing, we find all these mummies, all these sarcophagi all over the place, all these other burials, this whole thing, and all of a sudden you realize that the whole mountain is this story of their people, right? And down in the village, when we showed them the scans, they were climbing on rafters, you know, they're like, and I started crying, I couldn't help it, you know? It's overwhelming, but it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's adding such a layer not only of humanity but their identity. I can only imagine that empowerment that comes from providing that, but then receiving it. You know. But you also mentioned Iceland. And that's another place that I want to journey off into. So tell me about your work in Iceland and what you got going on up there.
That's part of a bigger project that we're launching for our. One of the things I really want to do is I'm now actively developing content, and I'm about to release a lot of stuff to stream it on YouTube, because a lot of the stuff I make it doesn't get, you know, people, it ends up there eventually, right? But a lot of the places I film, they don't get to see it for a while. And I realize that that's not fair. I mean, it's about them, right? So I want to start creating more and more material for YouTube. But this is part of a series that we're creating where, well, I'm going to Iceland anyway, because the people my sponsors who make my foot, this badass titanium, do everything foot, they've come up with this brand new thing. I can't even talk about it yet. I'm on NDA.
What you bring it up for?
But I can talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
But they're in Iceland, and we're doing a story. We're doing a series of stories on human kindness and how people can do things that take care of other people. And I look at that story of what's happening in Iceland when I go and try out this new foot as something that started for me, that, you know, in my own journey in a very similar way when I was lying in a hospital bed wondering what was going to happen. But also, a couple years ago, they discovered this skeleton in a cave in Borneo that was, I think it's something like, what is it, 31,000 years old? 31,000 years old. It's got the exact same amputation as I have. Yeah. And the guy lived for like 9 years afterwards. Because you can tell by the osteogrowth, right? And then there's all this cave art all over the cave. And I just think to myself, when I see that, I don't just see a skeleton, I see all the people that supported that person, that took care of that person 31,000 years ago.
Wow.
That's human kindness. Iceland's part of that today. It's the modern version of that. Because they're like, here's this thing we spent years working on to help give you all the mobility you've ever dreamed of. You know, we're going to do a series of those.
Yeah. Last thought, when you say you were laying there and wondering what's going to happen next, for someone who is watching this, who a lot of what we've talked about and your experience that you shared, this is kind of the first time they're hearing about anything like this, seeing anything like this. They are, if we zoom all the way out to regular life, because surely you know there's so much of your life that ain't regular. So there's plenty that is, you know, like you said, hey, I gotta go pick up my kids. That's regular shit. But at the end of the day, there are many aspects of your life that's not. I understand there's regular aspects of my life that's not normal or regular, I should say. But having said that, for that person who is in that kind of moment, when you do have snapshots of those moments, that's something that everybody can relate to. Oh shit, now what? What happens? What's your process from there?
Oh, it's pretty simple, you know, is that you never get to choose what happens. Really, you don't. You just get to choose how you respond. That's it.
Ooh, okay. Well, on that note, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy.
Thank you. This has
I'm so
been
happy.
incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Thanks to your whole
this
crew.
has been great. Yes. Be sure to follow Albert on Instagram at Explorer Albert, and definitely check out all his shows on National Geographic.